Order, Mr. Speaker.
Present us, O Lord, in all our doings with thy most gracious favor, and further us with thy continued help, that on all our works begun, continued, and ended in thee, we may glorify thy holy name, and finally, by thy mercy, attain everlasting life. Amen. Routine proceedings, introductions. I would like to invite all members to join me in welcoming two distinguished guests today in the Speaker's Gallery. Samantha Beacott became president of the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation in July of 2022. She is the 7th woman president in the Federation's history. Ms. Beacott has been an active member of the STF for over a decade. She was first elected to the executive in 2015 and served as vice president from 2019 to her elevation to the president's job 3 years later. She resides just outside of Lloydminster with her husband and 2 daughters. Ms. Beacott is a mathematician and is also passionate about promoting women in leadership. Joining Ms. Beacott is no stranger to this Assembly. Mr. Ian Hanna arrived in this building in November of 2004, serving as Director of Communications for the Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Hanna continued on in that post until November of 2007, when he became a special advisor to newly elected Premier Brad Wall. He is currently serving as Government Relations Advisor for the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation. Please join me in welcoming these two guests to the Legislative Assembly. Recognize the member from Saskatoon Eastview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to join with you in welcoming these guests seated in your gallery, Samantha Beacott and Ian Hanna. I've had the honor of welcoming them here on several occasions, and today on the last day of our sitting, it is again my great honor to welcome these leaders to their Legislative Assembly. Samantha has been such a fantastic leader for teachers in this province through what's been the longest teacher job action in the history of Saskatchewan. That's not something that anybody predicted or thought would happen, but she's been steadfast throughout that, standing up for the working conditions of teachers, because those are the learning conditions of students.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Her leadership, I believe, has been put on display lately as 90% of teachers voted to reject the last offer from this government, which shows the resolve. And that doesn't come easy. That comes with steady-handed leadership, consistent messaging of standing up for what's best for students in Saskatchewan. She's done that day in and day out in this role, and she should be very proud of the work that she's done. Of course, along with her, Mr. Ian Hanna has been a big support for Samantha and for teachers in Saskatchewan, the kind of leaders that our classrooms need and will benefit from. I'd like to ask all members to join me in welcoming these leaders to their assembly.
Hear, hear.
Recognize the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to join with you and welcome Samantha Beacott and Ian Hanna from the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation. Mr. Speaker, had the opportunity to speak with Ms. Beacott directly on several occasions over the last several months, and you know, her and I agree on one thing, and we'd like to get a deal done for teachers and students and families of this province. I've been encouraged by some of the discussions that have happened this week, and I'd ask all members to join me in welcoming Ms. Beacott and Mr. Hanna to their legislature.
Hear, hear. Recognize the Minister of Sask Bills.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To you and through you, I'd like to introduce a good friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, seated in your gallery. Mr. Speaker, Eric Schmaltz. Eric is he's former RCMP member for, I think, 14 years. Extraordinary auctioneer, by the way. He will, anybody's event that needs a good auctioneer, call Eric. The Reeve of the RM of Prince Albert, and they love him there. He's done a great job as the Reeve of the RM, you know, and now he's moving on to new ventures. He's our candidate in the Sask Rivers riding for the Sask Party. Mr. Speaker, Eric's been working hard at that. He's at many events. People are just helping him, doing lots of like I say, events and door knocking, and he's doing a great job. And I'll be out there helping him as well, Mr. Speaker, because he's a good friend, and we know that he'll represent that constituency well, and he'll serve this province well as a member of the Legislative Assembly after October 28th. Thank you.
Recognize a member from Regina Coronation Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Extended leave request for extended introduction.
Leave has been requested for an extended introduction. Is leave granted? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two incredible guests in your gallery. Bertha and Moses, they moved from Peru to Canada in 2005. They have been resident in Regina around for 10 years. Mr. Speaker, Bertha is a nurse with master's degree in public health and in intensive care unit. Currently, she is working as an age support assistant as a special care home in the center of Regina. Mr. Speaker, Moses is system engineer with postgraduate degree in e-commerce and artificial intelligence. He has worked on several IT projects in private, in public sector, in Alberta, in Manitoba, as well as in Saskatchewan. Currently, he's working as a software developer in an organization in agriculture sector. They also are reaching out how to apply artificial intelligence models in the healthcare system to improve the quality of service in this sector. I will request all members in this Legislative Assembly to give them a warm welcome to their Legislative Assembly.
Recognize a member from Saskatchewan Rivers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To you and through you, I would also like to extend an invitation and welcome to Eric Schmaltz. I have land in the RM of Prince Albert, so he is my Reeve. However, he doesn't live in the constituency that I live in, but I would rather he stay my Reeve than sit on the floor here. So, please join me in welcoming Mr. Schmaltz to his assembly. Thank you.
Recognize a member from Carrot River Valley.
Here, here. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. To you and through you, in the West Gallery, I'd like to introduce Terry Brom. Now, Terry Brom is going to be our candidate for Carrot River Valley. As everybody knows, I'm leaving. Now, Mr. Speaker, Terry took pharmacy, and she was a pharmacist for 25 years. And now she is working for New Sask in Tisdale. Her and her husband, Ian, both live in Tisdale. She has been in Alberta. She actually owned a pharmacy in Alberta. And they've been in Manitoba, but they came back to Saskatchewan because they saw how Saskatchewan was moving forward, Mr. Speaker. So it's really nice to have her here. Now, there's one minor little problem, Mr. Speaker. I was talking to her, and she doesn't know how to bake. So I sent her my brownie recipe, and I'm going to do a video of my butter tarts because I can't do the recipe. And I'm going to give it to her so that when she is in this chamber, then she can follow the tradition of the Carrot River Valley and keep on delivering goodies to all the members here. So I'd like to have everybody welcome Terry to her Legislative Assembly.
Recognize the Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask leave for an extended introduction.
Leave has been requested for an extended introduction. Leave granted. Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sitting in the West Gallery, I want to welcome my Deputy Minister, Rick Burton. Rick became Deputy Minister of Agriculture effective in July 1st of 2016. And he has been with the Ministry of Agriculture for over 35 years in various positions. Prior to becoming Deputy, Rick previously held the position of Assistant Deputy Minister of Policy for 3 years of that, and then Assistant Deputy Minister of Regulatory and Innovation for 5 years. Prior to joining the Deputy Minister's office in April of 2008, Rick held various positions in the ministry, including Director for Crop Development Branch and Director of Policy Branch. Rick has a BSA in Agricultural Economics from the University of Saskatchewan and a Master's in Business Administration from the University of Regina. He has completed the Directors of Education program and is a member of the Institute of Corporate Directors. Rick is chair of the Saskatchewan Crop Insurance Corporation Board of Directors and sits on the Saskatchewan Trade and Export Partnership Board of Directors and the Global Institute for Food Security Board of Directors as well, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've had the privilege of having an excellent team at the Ministry of Agriculture led by Rick Burton. And I've seen the respect that Rick has from his colleagues right across this country, and he has earned that. The experience that he has is going to be difficult to replace. It really has been a great pleasure to work with Rick over the past 6 years. We've traveled on trade missions together, but we've been to FPT meetings across this country together, and I've seen the work that he has done. I want to wish Rick and his wife Anna all the best in his retirement. I know he will enjoy his cabin down at White Bear, and he will enjoy the golf course a lot. And I also know, Mr. Speaker, he will be traveling with his 2 boys to watch the Blue Jays play at every opportunity he gets. Rick's official retirement is August 15th. And until then, he's going to have to deal with me, Mr. Speaker. I would like all members of this Assembly to give the great respect that Rick Burton deserves of serving the province of Saskatchewan and the Ministry of Agriculture for the past 35 years, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize a member from Regina Rosemont.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to join with the Minister to recognize someone who's provided exemplary leadership to his province for decades, and somebody who's provided senior leadership in agriculture in an extraordinary way. This is an exceptional civil servant who's given much to this province and this very important sector. And to him, on behalf of the official opposition, on behalf of all within this Assembly, I want to say thank you so very much. We wish you and your family all the best into retirement, good times down in White Bear, and catching Blue Jays games and everything else. You've certainly earned it, Mr. Burton. And while on my feet, as I stood up here, I spotted a constituent, a good person, Alicia Johnson, in the West Gallery here, and I want to welcome Alicia. She works in the financial sector in the province, and she gives back in extraordinary ways within our community to support the most vulnerable, always stand strong for human rights. And it's my honor to serve Alicia, and I'm thankful for community leaders and volunteers like Alicia within our community. I ask all members to welcome Alicia Johnson to her Assembly.
Recognize the Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To you and through you and to all members of this Assembly, please welcome here today 65 grade 4 students from École St. Elizabeth, right in the heart of the constituency of Regina-Wascana Plains. I look forward to your questions and a picture and a discussion later on today. I ask all members to join me in welcoming these fine students and their teacher. I forgot last time too. Valerie Tecumbe is here with the students. Thank you so much for bringing the kids. I ask all members to join me in welcoming these fine kids to our assembly.
Here, here. Recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Request leave for an extended introduction.
Leave has been requested for an extended introduction. Is leave granted? Carried.
It is indeed a privilege, Mr. Speaker, to be able to rise in this place and welcome a number of guests to their Legislative Assembly. I welcome all the guests here, but I want to single a few out. I want to join with the Minister and the critic for education in welcoming these leaders from the STF here today, here. Samantha and Ian. Always encouraging women in leadership, but Ms. Beacott, you have put on a master class in leadership in this province over the last year. It's so important to ensure that when we lead, we have the pulse, the interests of those that we serve at heart. And I think that the support that your members have shown in you is a testament of just how connected you are to the issues that your members are facing. And for that, you have my respect and my thanks. And I expect that the gentleman sitting behind you have a good part of that as well. And I want to thank both of you. I want to say a warm welcome to Bertha and Moses as well here today. Have had the benefit of meeting with you and you sharing your wisdom with us. I hope we can continue to meet again, and I just want to say how grateful and thankful we are that you chose Saskatchewan to put down roots. I want to say a warm welcome to Alicia and thank her for her community involvement through some really difficult times. It's made a difference. And also want to offer warm congratulations to Rick Burton as well as he embarks on this new journey. As Trent said, that time on the golf course is well deserved. And I want to point out someone who's sitting in the East Gallery. I don't know if she knows I saw her sneak in, but that is Cheryl Stesick, someone who has served and serves our caucus in extraordinary ways, has done so for over 15 years, 40 years of service in various roles to us and the people of Saskatchewan. Someone who knows, as has been said many times in the last few days, has forgotten more than many of us will ever know in terms of compliance and making sure the trains run on time, my calendar runs on time. But also, how do I say this, Mr. Speaker? We all have access to an EAP program here, and the amount of times I've seen people in Cheryl's office being cared for, revealing their concerns, their issues with her, I think is a testament to what a good listener she is, and someone we never ever doubt has our best interests at heart. That is a real testament, Mr. Speaker. To all of these guests, to Cheryl in particular, I say welcome, and welcome to your Legislative Assembly.
Hear, hear.
Recognize the Minister of Corrections, Policing and Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To you and through you, I'd like to introduce the amazing team that I get to work with on a daily basis. I'll start off with my Chief of Staff, Dan Radilski, if you could give us a wave, Dan. He has brought his wife, Colleen, Kyron, his oldest, and Nate, also known as Nate Dog, Mr. Speaker. And I only met Nate once, but I can tell you this, and I can tell the Assembly, Nate is a fighter, Mr. Speaker. He absolutely is. So I'm glad that he's able to join us here today. I also have my two senior admins that I have in my office, Debbie Wataniak and Michelle Shiz, who keep me on track on a daily basis and have been acclimatizing me to my new role as Minister of Corrections, Policing and Public Safety. And I also have Hilary Pascal, who is our comms person who just joined us this spring. Mr. Speaker, I'd like all members to welcome them to their Legislative Assembly today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Yorkton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A few quick introductions in the Assembly for me here today. First and foremost, in your gallery, my wife, Leon Ottenbright, and her sister, Terry, are here again today. Leon apologized to me last night. Apparently, she missed the first few minutes of my, my closing speech because the member for Carrot River Valley usually is a lot longer speaker, and he cut it a bit short. So she missed a little bit of the beginning. She caught tail end, or she caught it yesterday on video. So I just welcome my wife and her sister Terry to their Legislative Assembly. As well in the West Gallery, once again, I'm not going to forget her today, is my CA, Constituent Assistant Loretta Rich McGuinness. She's at the front row there, right beside a very good friend who I acknowledged yesterday, and will be my last time in this Assembly to acknowledge him in my career, as Fred Hill, Chaplain of the Legislative Assembly. We're just so blessed to have in this Assembly every day. Beside him is a good friend, Rod Doniston, who has been a friend and a support of mine over many, many years in this building and in this role. And a little bit farther to his left, to my right, is Scott Simpkins, who also has been a great person that's worked in this Assembly in different ministers' offices. He ran for us a couple of times under the Sask Party banner, but he's continued to be a long-term friend, and I just so appreciate them in the Assembly here today. So I ask all members to welcome them to their Legislative Assembly.
Reading. Recognize the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I'd ask for leave for a brief but extended introduction.
The Premier was requested an extended introduction. Is leave granted? Carried.
Mr. Speaker, just a couple of comments welcoming everyone that has joined us here today, maybe starting with the leader of the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation, the president of the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation, Samantha Beacott, joining her, Ian Hanna, and welcoming them to their legislature and thanking them, I think, for the discussion that we've been having as of late. And most certainly, I think we can all be in agreement that we do want to find a way to an agreement in the best interest of students, teachers, and families and the community. And I would say we're all diligently working towards that goal. Many people here, Mr. Speaker, from the Saskatchewan community. We have new Canadians that have joined us, and many leaders in their own right, Mr. Speaker. We have really, I think, along maybe what has been the conversation the last couple of days, which is change and renewal. As we find our way to an election on the floor of this Assembly, although many of these today, some of them, but not all of them, are associated directly with that. But we have, with us, Mr. Speaker, we have leaders in our ministries, staff of the ministries that are moving on, and I wish them all of the best. We have ministerial staff that are here, constituency staff that are here. We have spiritual leadership that have joined us here today, Mr. Speaker. We have family that has joined us over the course of the last couple of days, and family that is here today. And I just again say that without their love and support, nobody's here on the floor of this Assembly, and I would say that nobody has ever been on the floor of this Assembly without the love and support of their family. We have candidates that are here that quite likely may find their way to the floor of this Assembly, Mr. Speaker, and I would say we have students, the leaders of tomorrow, that have joined us as well, and I welcome them to their Assembly, Mr. Speaker. But I do want to single out just a couple of individuals that have joined us here today. It's Ava and Jennifer Lemontang. They're from Warman. Ava is attending the Warman School there. She spends a large portion of her time actually not in Warman but in Blaine Lake, which is in the constituency of Rosthern Shelburne, which I think is probably the best constituency in the province of Saskatchewan. I visit it every single week, actually, Mr. Speaker. Ava is a very, very interesting young girl and a leader in her own right with some of the ambitions that she has. And we had a question and answer earlier that says to me she might achieve some of those ambitions. One of her goals, Mr. Speaker, is actually to sit in this chair, Mr. Speaker. And I offered it to her today. She said it's maybe just a little bit early, but at one point in time she would like to be the Premier and represent her community and represent her province in the province. And I most certainly would encourage Ava to act on her dreams, whatever they are, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes they're a lot of work and they take some focus, but but don't ever back away from the dreams that you have. She plays for the Excel Spring hockey team. She aspires to play for the university hockey team while attending law school. That would all be, I think, prior to sitting in this chair in this assembly, Mr. Speaker. But what her birthday wish was to come down and spend a day at the legislature and meet the current Premier, Mr. Speaker. And today, fortunately, that birthday wish has come true. As I said, we had a fairly vigorous question and answer, that probably more vigorous maybe even than what's going to come here in the next few minutes, Mr. Speaker. But I want to thank both Ava and Jennifer for joining us here today. I want to wish you all the best as we go into summer, and all the best that you choose in your life, Ava. And I would ask all members of this assembly to join me with welcoming Jennifer and Ava Lamontang to their legislative assembly.
Recognize a member from Martensville-Warman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just to tag on to Premier's very kind words to Jennifer and Ava this morning. I've known Jennifer and her husband Eric for a number of years now. They're constituents of mine, and it's too bad Eric couldn't be here as well to see this, but I'm very excited for you, Ava. And Jennifer is the Director of Professional Practice, I believe, with the Saskatchewan Realtors Association. So we've had lots of good conversations, both as a constituent as well as her professional role. And full disclosure, Ava goes to Holy Trinity School in Warman, and she is a classmate of my daughter's in grade 4, and they get along fabulously. And I'm so happy to see you here, Ava, and happy birthday. Make sure Mom treats you really well today, and we'll talk to you very soon. Please join me in welcoming Ava and Jennifer to their Legislative Assembly.
Reading and receiving petitions, statements by members. I recognize a member from Regina Walsh Acres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the last 6 years under this Premier, rural Saskatchewan has not done well. Between 2018 and 2023, rural areas and small communities in Saskatchewan lost 21,600 jobs. Between 2018 and 2023, the number of businesses in rural and small communities of Saskatchewan fell by 7.4%, 860 businesses in total. Where is that strong and vibrant economy that the Sask Party has been referencing? Well, we shouldn't be too surprised about the job losses, because at the same time, Mr. Speaker, this tired and out-of-touch government was pulling nurses out of rural Saskatchewan at such a rate that there was a 21% drop. And this connects directly to the 951 service disruptions in rural hospitals that occurred between August of 2019 and July of 2023. Fewer jobs, fewer nurses, and fewer hospital services. The Sask Party just doesn't care about health care in rural communities. The news gets even bleaker when we talk about rural Saskatchewan and services. A 10% drop in registered nurses working in rural long-term care between 2018 and 2022, as well as a net loss of 10 psychiatric nurses. The only thing that the Sask Party has increased over the past 6 years in rural Saskatchewan is the level of crime, almost 50% higher than other areas of the province and several times higher than in other provinces. Rural Saskatchewan deserves better, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Recognize a member from Arm River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Outlook newspaper is currently celebrating its 115th year in business. Its first issue was released February the 5th, 1909, just 4 years after Saskatchewan became a province. As a matter of fact, the paper predates the town of Outlook itself, as Outlook was declared a town in 1910, over a year after the first issue was released. This means that they've covered all but 2 provincial elections, countless local marriages, births, graduations, and so much more. The Outlook has served not only as a newspaper for the past 115 years, but they have been the glue of a community and surrounding area by writing about topics that matter to their readers. Before we had 24/7 news at the touch of our fingertips, the Outlook was reporting on the issues meaningful to rural Saskatchewan with over 5,500 editions published. It is and continues to be the spirit of community. Their mission is to be a part of the fabric of Outlook, and they are doing just that, because even today, I can't attend an event in the Outlook area where I don't bump into Derek Ruddle, the Outlook's full-time reporter. The longevity of the Outlook shows the resilience and importance of small-town businesses here in Saskatchewan. And, Mr. Speaker, with that, I ask all members to help me to recognize and congratulate one of Saskatchewan's oldest newspapers, The Outlook, and I encourage everyone to go out and get a copy. Thank you.
Recognize a member from Saskatoon-Meewasin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure that everyone here is very happy to see another session coming to an end. But, Mr. Speaker, happiness is a vanishing luxury under that Premier. This tired, old Sask party has ranked last in Canada time and time again by Statistics Canada and many other organizations that analyze economic, health, and social performance metrics. This legacy has repeated itself once again, as a recent survey has named Saskatchewan as the unhappiest province in Canada. The happiness study was conducted using 8 key metrics: a life satisfaction survey, a median family income, unemployment risk, average life expectancy, perceived health, perceived mental health, crime rates, and air quality. Saskatchewan has received the lowest score among several metrics, including the life satisfaction survey and crime rates. Every other province in Canada ranks higher than Saskatchewan. This Premier's legacy is one of a province that can't supply its residents with health care, a province with the lowest life expectancy in Canada, a province with the highest rates of interpersonal violence, a province with the lowest rate of job creation, and a province with the second worst economic record in the country. Mr. Speaker, enough is enough. We can and will do better after the next election.
Recognize a member from Moose Jaw North.
And now for something different, Mr. Speaker. For the first time in franchise history, the Moose Jaw Warriors are the WHL champions. Last night, the Warriors clinched the Ed Chenoweth Cup with a 4-2 win over the Portland Winterhawks in Game 4 of the 2024 WHL Championship Series. Leading up to the finals, Mr. Speaker, the Warriors made quick work of Brandon in the first round of the playoffs, defeating the Wheat Kings in just 4 games. The Swift Current Broncos were next, Mr. Speaker, and they did dish Moose Jaw its first loss of the postseason, but the Warriors would roar back to win 4 straight games and advance to the first All-Saskatchewan Eastern Conference Championship since 1993. Moose Jaw then beat the regular season champion Saskatoon Blades, but it was a battle for the ages, Mr. Speaker. The team set a modern WHL record with 6 of 7 games requiring overtime.
Hear, hear.
The Moose Jaw Event Centre, better known as the Hangar, has been a near impenetrable fortress in the playoffs, Mr. Speaker, with the Warriors posting a stellar 8-1-1-0 record on home ice. The Warriors will now go on to represent the WHL at the 2024 Memorial Cup in Saginaw, Michigan. Mr. Speaker, I ask all members to join me in congratulating the Moose Jaw Warriors on winning the WHL Championship and wish them the best of luck in their battle for the Memorial Cup. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member for the Battleford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to recognize and remember the life of a man who was a pillar in our community, Mr. Don Light. Don passed away on April 27th at the age of 91. Now, the Light family is a recognizable name in the Battlefords. Don's grandfather, Frederick Walter Light, was a staff sergeant for the Northwest Mounted Police in the Battlefords, and Don's father, Frederick George Light, was the benefactor and driving force behind the Fred Light Museum in Battleford. And Mr. Speaker, if you haven't had an opportunity to visit that museum, it is certainly worth your time to do so. Now, Don was involved in many organizations in the Battlefords, but one of the most important was his involvement with the Northwest Historical Society. Don was proud of where he was from, and he worked hard to preserve the history of our community and to honor those who have come before us. And in particular, Mr. Speaker, many in our community remember the incredible work that he did to work on the Northwest Mounted Police Cemetery in Battleford. In recent years, Mr. Speaker, Don was a fixture at the Tim Hortons in Battleford, and I know that many will miss having coffee with him or just waving at him as they go through the drive-thru. Mr. Speaker, I would ask all members of this Assembly to join me in recognizing Don Light's contributions to the Battlefords, to Saskatchewan, and to offer their condolences to the Light family. Rest in peace, Don.
Recognize the member from Athabasca.
This year's 2024 Literacy Awards of Merit were awarded to several talented individuals and programs. Congratulations to all the award winners. I want to recognize 2 Cameco Literacy Learner and Bursary Award winners from Northern Saskatchewan, La Loche's own Alan Janvier and Mary Mackenzie of Stanley Mission. Mr. Speaker, these 2 Northerners have faced their own challenges and overcome much adversity in their literacy journeys. Alan was 62 years old when he went back to school after a 40-year career in mining. Mary is a 62-year-old woman from a large family, and one of her dreams was to always finish school. And in June of this year, she will be the first member of her large extended family to complete her grade 12. Hear, hear. This story fills me with pride as a Northerner. Mr. Speaker, recognizing Gabriel Dumont Institute, and I would like to acknowledge the work of Ernestine McNeil. She has been dedicated to literacy forever, and I remember her working in the Learning Center as a child, where she helped many young people with their reading. Congratulations to these 2 Northerners on all your hard work and dedication to their personal literacy journeys. You inspire us all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Here, here. Recognize the member from Yorkton.
Here, here. Hope beats fear. Here, here. Those were the first words of Premier Brad Wall in his 2007 victory speech when our government was elected the first time. Since 2007, Saskatchewan continues to choose hope. $2 billion in affordable measures for residents in each budget. The removal of the carbon tax on home heating. Here, here. The removal of more than 112,000 residents from the income tax roll. And in this budget alone, we're investing record amounts into classrooms, care, and communities. Here, here. Opening Saskatchewan's first portable pediatric MRI at the Jim Pattison Children's Hospital, a hospital that never would have been built under the opposition. Right. The creation of a new system to improve EMS response times. The most ambitious HHR action plan in the country. A new hospital is underway in Weyburn. Completion of the Regina Urgent Care Centre to serve our capital city's most vulnerable. And we spent time attracting more private capital trade. Uranium exports reached almost $1 billion in 2023 with a 1,525% increase to global exports. A motion that received unanimous support to devolve the Firearms Act to the province to strengthen our provincial jurisdiction. Here, here. We opened the Saskatchewan DLC for students to access online learning opportunities. And since 2007, we built and provided funding for 69 schools and 32 major renovations. Right. These are all initiatives that would have never happened under a different government, and we're proud of this record. Benefiting our Saskatchewan residents, God bless this province and its people.
Here, here, here. Question period to recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this tired and out-of-touch government is failing to deliver the cost of living relief that Saskatchewan families need. 57% of families are struggling to pay for groceries, and rents are rising faster here in Saskatchewan than in any other province. Families need a break now, Mr. Speaker, not after the election. How can the Premier defend the Sask Party's choice to vote against fuel tax relief?
Recognize the Premier.
Opposition failed to mention is that rental rates in the province of Saskatchewan are still the lowest in the nation of Canada, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with respect to where the opposition finds their sources or does their research, Mr. Speaker, I think we should all be aware of what is coming to the floor of this legislature when we see a member statement, Mr. Speaker, on the happiness of Saskatchewan people, Mr. Speaker. That is a survey that is actually conducted by an online casino. Mr. Speaker, the name of that casino is L7 Entertainment. It's based out of St. Julian's, Malta, Mr. Speaker. That's the research that's coming to the floor of the Assembly by the members opposite, Mr. Speaker, when they quote various surveys that have been performed, Mr. Speaker. We look at Statistics Canada, Mr. Speaker, and I'll tell you where we take the advice from, Mr. Speaker. The members on this side, members of the Saskatchewan Party government, take advice from the people of Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker, and after today, we're going to have a lot more time to go out and talk to them before the next election.
Recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Good idea, Mr. Speaker. I would advise the Premier to go out there and ask Saskatchewan people how happy they are about things right now. Now, for 40 days in a row, we've called on the Premier and his tired and out-of-touch government to act and cut the fuel tax, to provide the cost of living relief that Saskatchewan families need. But they continue to say no. And, Mr. Speaker, I think that tells you everything you need to know about just how tired and out of touch that Sask Party government has become. Right. And how clearly it's time for a change in Saskatchewan. Time for a government that will actually make life more affordable for people. Is the Premier really going to force Saskatchewan people to wait until after an election before they see any relief?
Recognize the Premier.
This is a government that has cut income taxes. This is a government that has cut the NDP education property tax, Mr. Speaker. This is a government that is not going to cut our highways budget, Mr. Speaker. As we see, we have seen the NDP finally come up with one idea. Again, no idea on how they're going to pay for that idea, Mr. Speaker. Are they going to do away with the graduate retention program? Are they going to do away with the seniors' income plan, Mr. Speaker? Are they going to do away with the investments that are being made in health care, either capital investments or the most ambitious health human resource plan in the country, Mr. Speaker? We see the NDP, after 4 years, come up with one idea, Mr. Speaker, and no mention of how they're going to pay for it.
Recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Here's an idea, Mr. Speaker. Cut the mismanagement scandal and waste that's been part of that government since the start. Now, this tired and out-of-touch government has failed to deliver on the cost of living, so I guess Saskatchewan people are going to have to wait until they have a Saskatchewan NDP government to provide that leave that they need. We're also going to need to change the government, Mr. Speaker, to fix the crisis in our health care system. In Saskatoon this week, at the ER at RUH, there was a total overwhelm of that system. 40 patients stuck waiting for a bed, another 21 waiting in the hallway. And that's not the first time we've seen this in Saskatchewan emergency rooms. Why does this keep happening, Mr. Speaker, under that Premier's watch?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we have discussed many times in this House, this government is very committed to our health care system. $7.6 billion in this year's budget, a 10.6% increase into funding for capital, into health human resources, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to Saskatoon, and I'm aware of the situation at Royal University Hospital, I've been to Saskatoon numerous times, to St. Paul's Hospital. I've been in contact with some of the frontline health care providers at Royal University Hospital, and will be meeting with them very soon, Mr. Speaker. This is why back in November the government provided some additional dollars to the SHA to be able to put those dollars towards the Saskatoon Capacity Pressure Action Plan, Mr. Speaker, and then annualize those dollars, put those additional dollars into the budget, Mr. Speaker, so that we can hire more staff to be able to address the pressures we face in our hospitals in Saskatoon, and that plan is working, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear. Recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, clearly the reason our healthcare system is in such a mess is because that Premier and that government have stopped listening to those who are on the front line. And here's what nurses have to say about that plan, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, "They're just not being heard, and nothing's being done to deal with that." Well, there's supposedly a plan. That plan hasn't done anything. It hasn't made any difference. I end the quote. Clearly, nothing is going to change in health care until we change the government. The Premier has shown, that minister has shown that they have no plan to change. Why doesn't he just get out of the way so that Saskatchewan New Democrats can get in there and fix the problems in our health care system?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the implementation of that plan in Saskatoon, in the first 30 days, the SHA, through the additional funding provided by this government, has delivered a number of different initiatives to help with the capacity pressure issues in Saskatoon. The establishment of 32 community transition care beds, Mr. Speaker, since December of 23, 75 convalescent care beds have been added in Saskatoon to help with patient flow, so that we can create more space, Mr. Speaker. The addition as well of 84 long-term care beds will be added within a couple of months or so here, Mr. Speaker, for a total of 159 more beds in community settings, Mr. Speaker, plus the hiring of 140 more full-time equivalent staff. Now, Mr. Speaker, the member talked about hearing from frontline providers. I've been doing that. This government has been doing that. We've been meeting with frontline providers, healthcare professionals, nurses, doctors. As I said previously, I've talked to doctors and nurses at St. Paul's Hospital. I'm going to be actually meeting with the RUH nurses as well in the very, very near future as well, to be able to hear from them and continue to work with them, collaborate with frontline healthcare providers, support what they do so we can help with healthcare in Saskatoon and across this province, Mr. Speaker.
Good job. Recognize the member from Regina Walsh-Acres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Short staffing problems are not limited just to the ERs in our big cities. Rural hospitals are struggling with short staffing caused by this tired and out-of-touch government. In Fort Capel, at the All Nations Healing Hospital, five of the 9 doctors will be leaving by this fall, and there's no plan to hire more. This hospital services over 30,000 people. What does the Minister of Rural and Remote Health say to all the people around Fort Capel whose access to health care is being put at risk?
Recognize the Minister of Rural and Remote Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Again, we see some pretty great exaggeration coming from the opposition, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to Fort Capel, this Health Human Resources Action Plan is already showing results, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in Fort Capel alone, we have 4 RNs, a nurse practitioner and a CLXT that have been hired as a direct result of our rural and remote recruitment incentive, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the Minister of Health said, we are constantly in contact with our frontline providers, with our doctors, with our nurses, and we have the most ambitious Health Human Resources Action Plan in the country, and it is showing results across the province. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Regina Walsh-Acres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The people who live in and around Fort Capel are the ones who are worried. They're the ones who have sent a letter, and they're the ones who have started a letter-writing campaign to the health ministers. So I'll read from their letter that they're writing to them. The absence of access to quality medical care, and especially a lack of access to a doctor, will significantly affect the well-being of my family and ultimately will affect the choices I make about where I choose to work and live. End quote. The mess that this Sask Party government has made of rural health care is driving people out of the province. What does the minister say to the rural people writing these letters to his office? People who this Sask Party government have taken for granted for far too long.
Recognize the Minister of Rural and Remote Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, here's a few more quotes from the communities that are benefiting from this Health Human Resources Action Plan, Mr. Speaker. A quote from the Mayor of Wolseley. Quote, "The successful execution of the phased opening plans for Wolseley Hospital is a result of extensive collaboration and hard work from the various stakeholders, including the Ministry of Health, the SHA management team, WMICC employees, your local municipal leaders, and the general public." That's Mayor Jerry Hill from Wolseley, Mr. Speaker. From Mayor Kyle Bennett of Shaunavon. Quote, "Thank you for meeting with us and listening to our concerns. We look forward to working with you to keep our facilities running smoothly and keeping our residents safe." End quote, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can go on with quotes from community leaders. Yes, we recognize we have challenges in some of our rural communities, and that's why we have the most ambitious Health Human Resources Action Plan in the nation that is showing results, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Recognize the member from Regina Walsh-Acres.
Mr. Speaker, the question was about Fort Capel and the worries about those residents. Now, we can list off a number of healthcare problems in Saskatchewan too. The Yorkton Surgical Department is closed for the next week because of short staffing. Broadview, Lanigan, Kamsack, Wolseley all have their ERs on reduced hours. Obstetrics in Estevan have been closed for more than a year. In the Premier's own backyard, the ER in Rostern has been closed 24 times since December. I could take the whole question period asking about all the communities who don't have access to the services they need today. The Sask Party broke health care in Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker, and they're not up to the job of fixing it. Why won't the minister just step aside and let New Democrats get to work on fixing local health care in communities across this province?
Recognize the Minister of Rural and Remote Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I said before, the member keeps saying closures. What he means is temporary service disruptions, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, some of the disruptions that he's talking about are as little as 3 hours long, and they're often due to somebody's illness, an unplanned vacation, Mr. Speaker. Those are temporary service disruptions. When he says closures, they would know what closures are because they closed 52 hospitals across Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, they closed 19 long-term care facilities. That's 1,200 long-term care beds, Mr. Speaker. That's not even touching the 176 schools that they closed or the highways that they let crumble, Mr. Speaker. When the opposition talks about get out of the way and take our ideas, those are their ideas, Mr. Speaker. Close hospitals, close schools, and let the highways crumble.
Yes. Recognize a member from Saskatoon Eastview.
Mr. Speaker, that was example A of an out-of-touch government explaining their failures to the people of Saskatchewan. There's no question that these two health ministers are bad at their jobs, and Saskatchewan people are left to pay the price. But it's clear that the Minister of Education is even worse, and he should have been fired long ago. He has wasted untold sums of money on a bad faith billboard campaign vilifying Saskatchewan teachers. Then he launched an unconstitutional attack on the rights of vulnerable children.
That's right.
Then he presided over the longest teacher job action in the history of Saskatchewan, and every time he opens his mouth, he makes the situation worse.
Right.
Enough is enough, Mr. Speaker. It's time for him to go. Why hasn't this failing Minister of Education resigned already?
Recognize the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the member for bringing up several of the things that we have moved forward in education recently, including Bill 137, Mr. Speaker, which is defending the rights of parents to be involved in their children's lives, Mr. Speaker. Meanwhile, we have an opposition, Mr. Speaker, who in this House and out on the doorsteps in Regina, Mr. Speaker, say that they would hide things from parents, Mr. Speaker. That is not what this government believes in, and we will stand behind Bill 137. But when it comes to investing in education, Mr. Speaker, we've increased operating funding to school divisions by 9%, Mr. Speaker. Increased classroom support funding by 15%, Mr. Speaker. This is a government that is investing in education more per capita than anywhere else in the country, Mr. Speaker, and we're going to continue to do so.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon Eastview.
Mr. Speaker, that's a minister that voted against a parental engagement strategy in this province, and he should have been fired long ago. The chaos that he's created in education today has put so much at risk. Students are worried about what might happen to grad and year-end celebrations, and parents with summer plans are worried about what happens next due to that minister's ridiculous threats. And teachers just want a deal that addresses the #1 issue in schools today: class size and composition. There is one person in Saskatchewan who can end all of this worry today, and it's that Minister of Education. Will he finally resolve this once and for all and get a deal on class size and composition with Saskatchewan teachers?
Hear, hear. Recognize the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, I would say over the last several days, we've been working collaboratively with the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation at the bargaining table, Mr. Speaker, which is where a deal is going to happen. Mr. Speaker, we look forward to those discussions continuing later today, Mr. Speaker. But let me just make something very clear, Mr. Speaker. The #1 priority in my job is students, the students in this province, Mr. Speaker. So when it comes to the students in grade 12 in this province who are graduating this year, Mr. Speaker, it is the belief of this government that graduation ceremonies need to be as normal as possible. Mr. Speaker, we've been collaborating with the 27 school divisions, working with them to understand what they need to make sure graduations can happen. Mr. Speaker, we know that 24 of 27 divisions are going to go ahead with graduation ceremonies, Mr. Speaker. We're going to continue to work with those school divisions because at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, this is about students.
Hear, hear. Recognize a member from Regina Douglas Park.
Mr. Speaker, this tired and out-of-touch government has completely lost the plot. They vilified our teachers through billboard campaigns and radio ads, and yesterday we learned that our former Sergeant-at-Arms, Terry Quinn, experienced similar attacks back in 2021 during the introduction of Bill 70. That bill completely stripped the independent sergeant-at-arms of his role in this building. The email we learned about yesterday was described as, quote, character assassination. Mr. Speaker, does the Minister of Environment stand by what she said at that time about Terry Quinn, the former sergeant-at-arms?
Recognize the Minister of Corrections, Policing and Public Safety.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Bill 70 was brought before this Legislative Assembly by the government. It was debated, it was discussed, it was voted on, and it received royal assent by the members on this floor that are elected, Mr. Speaker. We very much appreciate the people that are out there with the Legislative District Security Unit to be able to keep us safe every day. We've seen them in action, Mr. Speaker. They have demonstrated that time and time again, and I want to thank them for their service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Regina Douglas Park.
Mr. Speaker, Terry Quinn served our country admirably with the RCMP for decades before coming to work in this building. He explains in his letter that the minister told him, quote, there have been a number of incidents that have happened that has led to the government to not have confidence in the SAA, end quote. The letter goes on to say that the decision to strip the sergeant-at-arms of his role and authority was due to incidents that had nothing to do with his role as sergeant-at-arms. None of that had been discussed by the people on this floor during that debate, Mr. Speaker.
That's right.
None of that information was shared at the time. In Terry's own words, quote, my reputation has been defamed and I felt harassed by the statements of Minister Tell both in and outside the chamber since the bill was introduced, end quote. Does that minister stand by her comments and actions against this man who served Saskatchewan people honorably for decades?
Recognize the Minister of Corrections, Policing and Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nobody's calling in Mr. Quinn's service, Mr. Speaker. He's well respected by both sides of this House, Mr. Speaker. But again, Mr. Speaker, this is part of the legislative process. Is we do sit down, we bring bills forward. The opposition brings bills forward. We sit down, we discuss it, Mr. Speaker. This bill has been settled for years, Mr. Speaker. The Legislative District Security Unit that is keeping us and the members over there that are heckling, Mr. Speaker, safe each and every day. What I would ask if those members actually spent some time, introduce themselves to the members that are out there keeping us safe, instead of continuously running them down. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize a member from Regina Elphinstone Centre.
Mr. Speaker, almost every day we've canvassed the Sask Party's scandals, their waste of public dollars, their sweetheart deals with friends and insiders. And it's clear that the Sask Party hates it, Mr. Speaker. But you know who hates it more? Saskatchewan people. Enough is enough, Mr. Speaker. Saskatchewan people work hard for their money. They want to see investments in healthcare, in housing, in classrooms, not wasted on contracts with private businesses connected to Sask Party MLAs. Why did the Minister of Social Services allow public dollars to flow to these companies when no exemptions have been granted by the Commissioner under the Conflict of Interest Act?
Recognize the Minister of Energy and Resources.
Mr. Speaker, day after day, the members opposite stand up and they attack members of the Legislative Assembly. They attack former members of the Legislative Assembly. Yesterday, they attacked members of Crown Corporation's boards, Mr. Speaker, and they attack even private citizens, which is probably the most despicable of all, Mr. Speaker. If the members opposite... Mr. Speaker, the member opposite apparently feels that she says that's her job to attack private citizens. Mr. Speaker, if the members opposite have some evidence of wrongdoing, they should take it to the appropriate authorities. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, it's just unfounded allegations.
Hear, hear. Recognize the member from the Regina Elphinstone Centre.
I guess they're bringing in the big guns, Mr. Speaker. That member knows full well we did bring it to the appropriate person, and he'll deliver an opinion in 90 days or less. Mr. Speaker, it's our job to demand accountability and transparency from this tired and out-of-touch government. It's our job to ask tough questions, and we will continue to do that. We see sole source contracts handed to Calgary-based owners with the right Sask Party lobbyists. More than $500,000 donated to the Sask Party by Sask Power board members and their companies, Mr. Speaker, and companies connected to Sask Party MLAs cashing in on government contracts without the required exemption under the Act. This is a question of leadership. Under Brad Wall, Bill Boyd was made to resign when he was in breach of the Conflict of Interest Act. If the Commissioner finds the Conflict of Interest laws were breached in this case, what consequences will the Premier mete out?
Recognize the Minister of Energy and Resources.
Hear, hear. Mr. Speaker, it's incredibly disappointing. The member actually heckled from her seat that it's her job to attack private citizens. Yep. Mr. Speaker, the NDP somehow feel that if private citizens don't vote NDP, somehow they're not fit to serve in any kind of public position, Mr. Speaker. Yeah. That's atrocious, Mr. Speaker. It's why good people sometimes avoid supporting political parties or avoid being involved in politics, because of personal attacks. Mr. Speaker, again, if the member has some clear evidence, she needs to go to the proper authorities. Otherwise, once again, it's just unfounded allegations.
Hear, hear. Recognize the member from the John Elphinstone Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the people of Saskatchewan expect our crowns to be independent. They expect this government to invest in local health care. And they expect that their public monies will not be flowing to Sask Party businesses, but invested in Saskatchewan institutions. Mr. Speaker, these conflicts of interest are serious concerns, and enough is enough. The Act says that this conduct is barred, or that members with government contracts need to get an exemption from the Commissioner under the Act. That was not done. No exemptions were granted for either the Minister of Education or the member from Regina Northeast. And again, this is a question of leadership. Under Brad Wall, Bill Boyd was made to resign when he breached the Act. What consequences will this Premier mete out if it is found that these members breached the Conflict of Interest Act?
Recognize the Minister of Energy and Resources.
Hear, hear. Mr. Speaker, I find it somewhat ironic that lately the members opposite in questions will praise Brad Wall. I proudly served under Brad Wall when he was Premier, Mr. Speaker, and I don't remember them ever praising anything Brad Wall did, Mr. Speaker. What we have here is an incident where the NDP are trying to target private citizens, members of Crown boards, anybody who doesn't vote NDP, Mr. Speaker. This is a dangerous precedent in democracy, Mr. Speaker, where they think anyone is fair game and they try to bully and coerce people who don't support their party. Mr. Speaker, the vast majority of people in this province do not support the NDP.
Hear, hear. Recognize the member from Saskatoon-Meewasin.
Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, last year we set a new record for overdose deaths in our province. At the rate things are going, we're on track to beat those numbers in 2024. Past that record. Hundreds of families will be changed forever by a preventable loss. If only this government would listen to experts. We know that the policies put forward by the government will only make things worse. Today is the last session. We probably won't be gathered in this chamber again until after the election. So to the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, when we gather here again before Christmas, how many more people will have lost their lives to this preventable overdose crisis?
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear. Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and we, as a government, extend our condolences to everyone in this province who's lost someone due to overdose. Mr. Speaker, as you've heard the Minister for Mental Health and Addiction say many times, we do take this very seriously. That's why we have unveiled a new action plan to add 500 more treatment spaces into this province, doubling the amount of capacity of treatment spaces we have in Saskatchewan, moving to implement a central intake system, Mr. Speaker, to make it easier for people to access treatment, and moving to the recovery-oriented system of care, Mr. Speaker. Overall, Mr. Speaker, I would say this. This budget and this session has been a government that has been focused on classrooms and on care and on communities. Investments that are only possible because of a strong and growing economy right here in this province, Mr. Speaker. This is a government focused on hope, not on fear. A government focused on optimism, not negativity, building people up, not tearing them down, Mr. Speaker, and on a better tomorrow for everyone in Saskatchewan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ministerial statements, introduction of bills, presenting reports by standing and special committees, orders of the day. I recognize the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask leave to make a statement regarding the conclusion of this session.
The Premier has asked leave to make a statement. Is leave granted? Carried.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to colleagues for granting leave. I have a few minutes of comments actually to make in light of the close of this session, in light of the last couple of days of debate, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure the Leader of the Opposition will have some comments as well. It is days like the past 2 days, I think, that bring with us some mixed emotions as we find our way to the close of the 29th legislative session, Mr. Speaker. It's also a time for renewal, and I want to really focus a few comments on 3 different themes. One is the team aspect of what we do in this legislature. 2 is what we heard very much over the last couple of days is the importance and the focus of people in the work that we do. And the importance of change and the importance of renewal of the people that ultimately serve Saskatchewan residents on the floor of this Assembly. I was jotting down some notes as we went through the last few days, and I was thinking of team, and I was thinking, you know, what does team actually stand for? And we talk a lot about teamwork and working together on this side of the House, and I came up with a few. They'll be corny, maybe not as corny as Ben Heppner's, but very close, Mr. Speaker. But first, I would say that the T is for tenacious, Mr. Speaker, and we have members, private members, ministers that very tenaciously pay attention to the details of the work that they're doing on behalf of the residents of Saskatchewan. You need energy to serve on the floor of this Assembly and to serve as an MLA, and that's what I would say the E stands for, Mr. Speaker. The A, you need to be appreciative and humble. And if you aren't for just a moment, this place has a way of bringing you back to being humble, for sure, Mr. Speaker. But be appreciative of the opportunity that you have to serve on the floor of this Assembly for whatever period of time that might be. And last and not least, I would say, is to be magnanimous in your service, Mr. Speaker. Set lofty goals, but noble goals, and approach those goals on behalf of the Saskatchewan residents with a courageous spirit, Mr. Speaker. It really is, it is about teamwork, and I would just say that on this team, and we heard this a number of times over the last 2 days, that each and every member has the opportunity to represent their constituents and the views that they hear on the doorsteps and in the conversations that they have. Each and every member has the opportunity to be heard, whether it be in our caucus meeting or with an individual meeting with another MLA or minister. And each and every MLA has the opportunity to contribute to the direction of this government and contribute to the direction ultimately of our province, Mr. Speaker. And I would say that's actually true for all members on the floor if you look at some of the work that has transpired over the course of the last 4 years. But that's the team that I'm part of. Here, here. And that's the team I'm very proud to be part of, Mr. Speaker. As I said, it's with mixed emotions. We see some of the statements that have been made over the last 48 hours. On one hand, it's sad for us to see colleagues go. Some have served for an awful long time and been mentors to many, myself included. And on the other hand, it's excited to see them meet new challenges and opportunities in their life. And I'd say that these MLAs are not leaving us entirely. They are only a phone call away, and our paths will cross again on both sides of the Assembly. 16 MLAs who are not going to be on the ballot this October, and I would say that in all 16 of them, they're unique individuals in their own way, in a positive way, Mr. Speaker. As we know, our differences are our strengths in this nation. If respect comes to the table in each of those cases, Mr. Speaker. But we saw, a variance of life skills, a variance of backgrounds that are brought to the floor of this Assembly. And but I would say there is some similarities as well, as all that came here for a singular reason. Again, this extends across the floor of this Assembly. They came to help and to represent the residents in their constituency, and more broadly to improve their community and improve their province from their perspective. And what we hear in question period and otherwise is some of the differences in view of that perspective, Mr. Speaker, but I would say it's much less in Saskatchewan than it is in other parts of the world, and for that we can be thankful. Of the folks that are not running again, we have a combined over 200 years of experience among these MLAs. That's impressive. Very, very impressive, Mr. Speaker. And I think when I say that there's a whole lot of mentorship and experience that is walking out the door this election season, that is true. But there's also opportunities. As we see candidates here today, candidates have been here over the course of the past number of weeks. There is opportunities for renewal, opportunities for fresh ideas, again, on both sides of this legislature, and I know that those ideas are going to be presented to the Saskatchewan people over the course of the next number of months, Mr. Speaker, and we can be so appreciative that we have a governance system where Saskatchewan people will determine the outcome of that election and where we will all sit after that point in time, those of us that continue to run. So a couple of comments, and I do want to just briefly comment on a couple of opposition MLAs that are not running again, Mr. Speaker. We have the MLA for Saskatoon University. Mr. Speaker, she served, elected in 2020, and served as the opposition critic for advanced education, innovation, and the status of women, as well as the associate critic for Labour and the opposition deputy whip has also been part of her service, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank her for her service. Can we use names yet, or is that names off? I have to use it.
Names,
all right,
no names.
all right. We'll keep it proper. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank her for her service to the constituents, to the province, and what she has brought to the floor of this Assembly. I haven't always agreed all the time, in all fairness, Mr. Speaker. But what I can respect is that when someone does have a view, they do bring that to the floor of this Assembly, Mr. Speaker, and I think that's what each of us are elected to do, and that's what the member from Saskatoon University most certainly did. And so I wish her well in all that life offers you. Mr. Speaker, the member from Cumberland, long-serving member from Cumberland, he was elected in 2008 in a by-election in that area, Mr. Speaker. I know that constituency somewhat, Mr. Speaker, and I would also echo the fact that that the member from Cumberland, he has also represented his constituency well. He most certainly is a resident of that constituency. And I want to highlight just some of the work, the collaborative work that I saw happen over the course of the last 4 years was really led by the member from Cumberland, Mr. Speaker, and it was the work that he did with respect to suicide prevention. An important conversation that leads us into mental health supports, all too often subsequent. Not as good as him, Mr. Speaker. He's quite a jigger, actually, quite nimble on his feet. But I do thank him for the jigging lesson that we got on the day we were actually doing the 60 scoop apology in the rotunda here, too, Mr. Speaker. Again, an important day for that particular member and many Saskatchewan people. Mr. Speaker, as we move over to this side of the Assembly, the member from Saskatoon Riversdale. If you want to know anything about the member from Saskatoon Riversdale, know these three things. Know that it is a great day to be in Saskatoon every day. Know that he will always advocate on behalf of his friends and the residents that he represented in the city. And the people from Saskatoon Riversdale can know so well they've been represented over the last 4 years by this particular member. And if you want to know who he is, you can go back to April the 28th of 2022 and watch the 75-minute debate. It was a debate on suicide, Mr. Speaker. We had the member from Athabasca. We had the late member from Regina Wallshakers, a previous late member from Regina Wallshakers, and the current member, outgoing member from Saskatoon Riversdale, pardon me, take part in that debate. And I would say that it was, in my opinion, one of the most impactful debates that I have seen on the floor of this Assembly, and I thank him and all of those members, including my friend, the late Derek Myers, for taking part in that debate. Mr. Speaker, I listened to the member from Kelvington-Wadina's speech. Mr. Speaker, I followed a founding member of this party into that seat, and I took really 3 points from the speech that he provided. One was the opportunity that this province has, Mr. Speaker. If the opportunity that lies before for all Saskatchewan residents, and I believe it's great, and after listening to the member, I know that he certainly believes that as well. And he talked about the people of his constituency and the role that they had played in building this nation many years ago, and the role and how they had to travel across the nation in order to participate in that growth and in building the Canada that we know and love, Mr. Speaker. And he now spoke of how the people in his constituency can stay at home and build our province and our nation from their community. And that, I think, is something that has changed in Saskatchewan, as people now expect that opportunity to stay here, to build their community, build Saskatchewan, and through that build their nation, not have to leave to do so, Mr. Speaker. And I would just take this opportunity to wish him and his lovely wife, Giselle, a 2-day belated anniversary, 47 years. Speaker, we have on this side of the House the first Indo-Canadian that's ever been elected to the floor of this Assembly. And so when some youngster is in the stands, some K-12 student or what that might be, and they ask, what can I do? The answer is quite simple. You can do anything you want, and you can look at a gentleman like this that is breaking glass barriers in that respect. The first Indo-Canadian person to be elected to this legislature, Mr. Speaker, involved in his community. It's no accident that he's elected, Mr. Speaker, when you look at the involvement that he has in his community, predominantly the Indo-Canadian community, Mr. Speaker. And we saw that this past weekend with the parade and events, probably about 10,000 people out, Mr. Speaker, but also his involvement with the Saskatchewan Cricket Association. And I still don't know the rules to that particular game, Mr. Speaker. But involvement through the Saskatchewan Cricket Association with the Canadian Cricket Association, Mr. Speaker, and most certainly, as we saw, as I mentioned this past weekend, his involvement with the Sikh community right here in Regina. And I wish him and his family and his wife Seema all the best in all that life has to offer them as well, Mr. Speaker. The man of many suits, the box of Crayola 64, Mr. Speaker, the member from, let's call it Armed River, Mr. Speaker, slick scorecard. Mr. Speaker, this member, he spoke greatly about his family and how gracious he was. And I think we see that in how he lives his life each and every day. When he has an introduction, you know it's going to be a lengthy one because he truly loves who he is introducing. And he has stories and has experiences with, many, if not all of the people that are here, even if they have only met for a couple of minutes. And so I particularly like the story that this member told on the floor of this Assembly in the past. I've been elected about 4 years, so in the past year or so. And it was when he was talking about telling his students that he was going to run for politics, and they asked him which party. We can all, Mr. Speaker, just think of that story as we go through the next number of months. That's a great sign of integrity and a great sign of what you need to know about the member from Armed River, Mr. Speaker. I would share one other story about how he hooked me in a golf game, Mr. Speaker, because he's likely a scratch golfer, but he wears jeans to the golf course, so you might bet with him, and I would advise you not to, Mr. Speaker, because, and there's a story behind that, but just be careful with the man of many suits when you find him around the golf course. You will lose. Mr. Speaker, when my introductory comments around team, when I think of team and a team player, there's a number of people I think about, but first among them is the outgoing member from Kinnersley. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if I've met many people, if any, that understand the value of a team and the role that you play on a team like this particular member. He knows the difference between what is needed in Kinnersley, Saskatchewan, and Coronation Park, Regina, and respects the views that come from Saskatoon, Riversdale. That's a true member of a team, Mr. Speaker, is understanding and respecting the people that you're sitting at the table with, Mr. Speaker, listening to them and supporting them when they need support. And that's what this gentleman does each and every conversation that he has with his colleagues. That's why he was elected as a deputy caucus chair, Mr. Speaker, because I think very many others on this side think the very same way. With that always comes, unfortunately or fortunately, a dash of sarcasm. And with that, Mr. Speaker, unbeknownst to me at the time when we were going through a pandemic and split up, he was, if not the captain of the Hanson brother team, most certainly a vocal member of what was going on there, along with a couple of others that I will speak about a bit today and maybe one at a later time. Oh, look at this, the member from Kenora Pelly, a fellow Hanson brother. Mr. Speaker, and unfortunately a Boston Bruins fan. But, Mr. Speaker, I would just make note of the member from Kenora Pelly served on a number of different places within government, but I want to make note of one. His work as as a representative for Saskatchewan-Ukraine relations, Mr. Speaker, something that this member took very, very seriously, very much was engaged on and was listening to the community through a very trying time. And Mr. Speaker, people of Ukrainian descent, not just those that have come in the last few years, make up a tremendous portion of this province, and I would say in many of the communities that were built across Canada, as were talked about earlier, and are now being built in Saskatchewan, are very much, the Ukrainian people of Ukrainian descent are taking part in building our communities and building this province, Mr. Speaker. And in the last number of years, with what is really an unfathomable Russian invasion of Ukraine, it's been this gentleman that has been our government representative, listening to the community, Mr. Speaker, working with ministers on how we can be a safe place for refugees, Mr. Speaker, from Ukraine. And I want to thank him most certainly for his work, competent work, and so ever so important work in this space. I also want to thank him for his generosity. For those that don't know, and I don't know if he's still doing it, but for many years, this member, he's renowned for his shashlik recipe. And, but every Christmas, Mr. Speaker, him and his family will offer a lunch to people in the surrounding community and region, and they serve a lot of people. And I think when your family asks what you want for Christmas and you say, come help me for a day so we can make lunch for the community, that's a guy I want to sit with, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear.
A member from Carrot River Valley who is upset with the stronger power poles that we've been putting up. Jovial, a great baker, he's tough, he's edgy, he's a great singer, Mr. Speaker, but he has a big heart. And you can see that when he stands up and immediately starts talking about his family. He finds that very difficult, Mr. Speaker. I don't know how he sings at funerals, to be honest with you, Mr. Speaker. But I would say I can say a number of things about this individual, but one quick story. As we know, he was a crop duster, and you know, for me to get in a plane with a fellow, I want to understand that, you know, they're pretty fussy in particular with all they do. And I didn't know that Fred might be that individual until we went on a Northern Forestry tour. And if anybody knows Fred, he drives a black Chrysler 300. And off we go on every logging road throughout northern Saskatchewan, what it seemed like. And we got it back at the end of the day, and there's a layer of dust on that car that thick, inside the door jambs, inside the car, on the dash, everywhere else. The member and I, we were leaving the next morning. I can't remember where we were going, but he was picking me up in Prince Albert or somewhere like that, and he was driving. I jumped in his car. There wasn't a speck of dust in it. And I looked over, I said, Fred, I fly with you anywhere, man. Pardon my language, I was quoting myself. I say to the member, I would fly with you anywhere, Mr. Speaker. He shows that in all he does in representing the constituents of Carrot River. He shows that in all he does with his impeccable baking that I hope the recipes will be passed on. And he shows a great degree of humility in every conversation that he has, and I want to thank him for his ever so many years of service, and we will at some point in time get him to say, go Hafford Vikings. That might be a bridge too far. I'll say it once for you, go Wildcats. Moving on to my brother from another mother, the member from Yorkton. Man of faith, there's no denying that. And just watch him for 10 minutes, talk to him for 2 minutes. Mr. Speaker, you will never meet a stronger individual and a stronger man with his personal faith than the member from Yorkton. Faith, family, friends, work, 4 balls, Mr. Speaker. Work will bounce back. Don't need to say any more. That says so much. The member from Saskatoon Northwest, also a very gracious individual, much like the member from Arm River. Seldom an introduction in his house will go by without a personal story. And this is an individual that cares so deeply about people. He's kind, he's gentle, he's caring, He brings to the floor of this Assembly a tremendous amount of experience through his career, but I would say also through his personal life. See, not in addition to following the outgoing member from Saskatoon Southeast through his career path of school divisions, municipal city council, on the floor of this Assembly, Minister of Justice. He's a father. He's an amazing son-in-law, Mr. Speaker, and I see that firsthand as he has aging parents-in-laws in my community of Shelburne. And Gord, I want to thank you for what you do with them. The the member from Saskatoon. Where are you from? Northwest. He talked of being a very reluctant politician. I'd say he's doing it quite well. He's doing it very, very well. And I want to share just one story here that is not going to be helpful for this member. We often talk of, many of us have passions. Some will collect stamps, some will collect coins. The odd one will have a car or two, but we all have a toy or two that we've collected over the years. This member, I've been asked, what his greatest fear was. He said his greatest fear is that that he would pass away and his spouse would sell all of his cars for what he told her he paid for them. And a true friend, this member and I were having a discussion sometime after a leadership race that we had both ran in, and I remember things had gotten pretty tough. We'd had a number of events that were pretty tough here in the province and across Canada and globally. And he looked at me and he said, leadership race, that's the best thing I never won. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your friendship, and it doesn't end here. There's a number of things that you need when you lead a party and lead a government. I can remember a conversation I had about 4 years ago with an individual, and what it came down to is I said, you know what I need 3 things. I need clean air, I need clean water, and I need 4 more years out of you. Oh. Well, Mr. Speaker, we got him out of the member from Weyburn. I would start off by saying, the decision to be an MLA in grade 2 on a visit to this Assembly, that is in no way normal. Or should it ever become normal?
Can I borrow that?
But Mr. Speaker, I have a few comments that I'll probably talk about at the end about this member, and that has to do really with some statements he made about what it is we do here, who we work for, who we work with, and who the people are that are closest to each of us. But I would say prior to that, well, let me start with this. This member, he's a university education. He has a history degree, which is really a pre-law degree. So I believe in his office he has a pre-law KC, or a pre-law degree. And I don't know if he has a pre-law KC or not. I don't know if he made that particular list. He's still on the waiting list for that. But this member and a few others have taught me one thing about members that maybe don't live in our capital city and need to commute here. The dedication that they have to their family, and this again is irrespective of which side of this Assembly you sit on, it's pretty tremendous. The Deputy Premier spoke a little bit about the early days of her elected career. It's pretty tremendous, and the dedication, love, and commitment to his family is most certainly always on full display with this member, in addition to his competence in any and all of the files and the work that he has done here. And I think he has most certainly, despite his young age, 29, he's elected at 26, and he's been here 18 years. Despite his young age, Mr. Speaker, he most certainly is wise beyond his years in life, and is a mentor of mine and a friend. The member from Batoche, the historian of the party. historian of the party, the auctioneer of the party, and second historian from Weyburn, aspiring historian. We have the historian and the aspiring historian. He hasn't quite made any comparisons to Louis Riel coming to Regina yet. However, I did hear yours, and I would just say this member. Seldom did you go to a meeting, and the first time I learned this was actually at a school division meeting in the community of Prince Albert, where to close the meeting, we have a Winston Churchill quote, and you most certainly did not disappoint in your farewell speeches. As you said, and I quote, "Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all of the other forms that have been tried from time to time." Winston Churchill. I wanted to read a Winston Churchill quote in honor of you. It's titled, "Linchpin of the English-Speaking World." Canada is the linchpin of the English-speaking world. Canada, with those relations of friendly, affectionate intimacy with the United States on one hand, and with her unswerving fidelity to the British Commonwealth and the motherland on the other, is the link which joins together these great branches of the human family. A link which, spanning the oceans, brings the continents into their true relation and will prevent in future generations any growth of division between the proud and the happy nations of Europe and the great countries which have come into existence in the New World. Really puts into perspective what we are doing here in this Legislative Assembly across Canada and in North America. That was Winston Churchill at Mansion House in London on September 4th, 1941, at a luncheon in honor of one Mackenzie King, the Prime Minister of Canada. Mr. Speaker, I would just close with this on the member from Batoche, is to quote him in my closing. "You'll pray for me, I'll pray for you." Thank you. A couple of comments on the member from Indian Head Milestone. When I first came into this assembly, I sat there. He sat, I believe, here, and took most of the questions every day as he was the health minister. That was in 2011. And I sat back there and I was watching, and I've shared this story with him many years ago, and it was fat stacks of cash, scandal, waste, and we heard it all. Lean was just coming in at that point, Mr. Speaker, and he was up for many, many, many questions in this assembly. But I also always noticed that he answered them quite competently. And so the first question would come, and he would get up, and he would, be very, very respectful with the answer and answer the question. And the second question would come, and he would start off that way. We saw a little bit of this in his speech theme as well. So maybe didn't deteriorate, but got stronger as we went along. He'd start off that way, and then he would start to do, and I said, really, what I saw is you're putting the ball on a tee. And then the third question would come, and then all of the politics would pour out across the floor of the assembly. And I was quite impressed with all of this. And so when I explained it to him, and I had a question, and I said, so if I've figured this out, and I've been here weeks or a month or two, why don't they just ask two questions? He looked at me and he said, I'm not sure, but don't tell them. Anyway, the story, I think, after 25 years of service, 25 years of service, 2.5 decades of service, Mr. Speakers, I would compare the member from Indian Head Milestone to a fellow by the name of Bill Massal. Always there to help. Never let you down. Work on you, we work with you for 6 campaigns if necessary. He very much was a part of, me forming some of my thoughts and, how I would conduct myself in this assembly in the early days, and he always took time to explain to me. One individual, one story is, if you ever find yourself on the front page of a newspaper, and it might not be the most flattering story, and all due respect to the media, because it is this way, he said, don't worry too much about it because they're already looking for a new story for tomorrow. and the moral of that was not so much about what he was saying, but don't take yourself too seriously in this place. Things change, time changes, and that's why we're here today. I did not know that he answered his phones as the Minister of Health in the early days, and I would advise the current ministers, and my advice to other ministers during the pandemic was to not do that. Mr. Speaker, and just say the advice I also heard in this member's speech was, change happens, nothing stays the same despite the efforts of the CAC PAC. Change does occur, Mr. Speaker, and I thank this member for his service. I thank him for, again, yesterday in his outgoing speech, helping Saskatchewan residents find their way to what will be a very important ballot question as well. Thank you. If the best part of being an MLA is about the people, well, then the member from Saskatoon Southeast is a cut above the rest. Dangerous, no doubt, if you're going to leave your phone around unlocked or your computer unlocked, and he has been known to hand out pink slips and all sorts of nefarious things. His judgment really can be called into question on many occasions. And I would say that with this member leaving this building, the building is going to be much, much safer. Much safer, Mr. Speaker. Again, when I think of team, this member comes to mind. You ever need anything, you give him a call, and he will be there. He was the first official agent for this party. He ran in 2003 and started his career on the floors of this assembly, but he was the first official agent for this party when it formed. He was the only guy that would do some free legal work for us to form the party. He must not have been too busy. He was on the original steering committee for the Saskatchewan party. He was on the original in 2003 when he ran the Win Saskatoon committee that we had with the member from Saskatoon Willow Grove and the former member, I believe, from Saskatoon Sutherland at the time, if I'm not mistaken. Mr. Chair, what this individual teaches us is to work hard, don't take yourself seriously, keep your telephones and computers locked, but always have fun and enjoy everything you do, because it is only for a period of time that you are going to have the opportunity to do it. Thank you. The Deputy Premier. Proudest moment. Well, we'll get to that. When I was going to run for this position, I had an individual that sits to my left tell me, "What are you worried about? It'll be easy." That's worse advice than the member from Saskatoon Southeast is giving. And I don't think anybody in this assembly believes that Donna Harpard cried for the first 6 months that she arrived. There isn't a chance. Not even after she had a tree stolen from her from the former premier, which I think we should all take a lesson from, is just don't mess with her. She subscribes to the emotional school of feelings and empathy that I think Reg Downs has, and that's two feelings. The first one is rage, and the second one is indifference. But I say that jokingly because my friend, the Deputy Premier, our Minister of Finance, I know her to have a tremendously large heart. She's loyal, she's a loving friend, and one that I can certainly, at least so far, have always been able to count on. And I say that because we fight every day. We haven't agreed on one thing yet. Come on. But we find the best place, Mr. Speaker. Humility, as I said earlier, is important, not taking yourself too seriously, but humility and understanding who you serve. And I listened intently when I heard after 25 years of service, the member for Humboldt-Watrous said one of the most proud moments she had was the introduction of the SED program, for all the reasons that she had indicated. Out of all the files and all the commitments and all the service and all the successes, that was the proudest moment of this individual. And so I would say it is with deep sorrow, actually, that we see all of these members and the Deputy Premier leave. But to their families, it warms my heart to know that they are coming home to spend much more time with those that they love and those that love them. In closing, okay. There was an article here, and I think you could have a similar analogy to the formation of this party many, many years ago, but there was an article that was written here. It was by the CBC in August the 31st of 2017. So at that point in time, former Premier Wall had announced that he wasn't going to be running again. There was a leadership race that was formulating, and there was some astute academics, one is no longer with us, unfortunately, that had put forward some predictions on what would happen after a leadership race. And here I quote that the leader presumably will want to put a fresh face on government, so we'll see another shift probably at the end of January or early October. Goes on to say, pointing out that Donna Harpower, the newly appointed finance minister, may not even have time to prepare or table a budget if she was newly appointed as the Minister of Finance. Well, I'd say in her speech, the Minister of Finance had said that she was also an unlikely politician. She'd also said that she had always felt somewhat underestimated in her career. Well, I would add one more piece to that is she also found herself, after so many elections, unbeaten, Mr. Speaker, unbeaten in her constituency. And I think you can find stories that would be very similar to the formation of this party. Mr. Speaker, change is not easy. It's not easy in our families. It's not easy in our careers. In fact, over the last 2 days, I say it felt a little bit abrupt. As we've been working together, I've been part of this caucus for 12 or 13 years now, and it just seems like we're losing so much for myself personally, and I think losing so much of our caucus, and in fairness, losing so much from the floor of this assembly. We're losing people with such historical knowledge. They have experience, they have incredibly competent individuals, and they have a memory and an ability to keep things in context as to what the work is we're doing here. But I would say, and I would add to that, that we are losing so much, but there's much coming. Over the course of the next number of months, there's much coming. Since 1905, as a member from Batoche had mentioned, there's been 776 MLAs serving the floor of this assembly. That's an average of 26 changing each and every 4 years as we are closing out the 29th legislature ourselves as a party. And when I was elected, there were 16 new MLAs that arrived on the floor of the assembly. And I believe one crossed the way at that point in time. 2016 was 17. This last election was a few less because I pulled the clean air, clean water thing. Mr. Speaker, was 13. And we have about 16, I believe, retiring from the floor of this assembly today that we're aware of. I would say that we were all new MLAs at one point. I'm reminded of a story Bob Benrod told of his early days in 1991, I believe, where he came bounding up the steps with an empty briefcase, walked into the front doors of this beautiful building, and the security said to him, "Who are you and where are you going?" He says, "Well, I'm a new MLA and I'm here to find my office." And he said, he let me in, and he said, I was lost in that building for 2 weeks. Mr. Speaker, I think we all had that experience of the awe of walking up the steps of this building and then ultimately being lost in that building, in the building for 2 weeks, and then really sitting in this assembly and watching and learning and allowing ourselves to be mentored, and fortunate that there are people that would mentor us. Some of the most significant files that have been held in government by, I would say, leaders, traditional leaders, historical leaders of this province. I think, obviously, of our former Premier Brad Wall, but I also think of Roy Roman. I think of Tommy Douglas. I think of Woodrow Lloyd, associated with the Douglas government. I think of Walter Scott, who commissioned the building of this beautiful building. They were all part of a renewal process at some point in time. The average length of service of an MP or an elected member across the nation of Canada is about 8 years. So despite the CAC-PAC's comments yesterday, things do change. They don't stay the same, even if they seem like they do. The renewal of any organization, including a political party or collectively all of us in how we serve on the floor of this assembly, it's difficult at times, but it's necessary, Mr. Speaker. I want to close with a couple of comments on people. And I would say that renewal is all about people. First, the people we work for, our constituents. Collectively, we represent every Saskatchewan resident on the floor of this assembly. And I would say, I'd like to think that we represent them well. And I do think we represent them well, Mr. Speaker. In the case of retiring members, we're losing 200 years of experience of that representation. And I would say that in doing so, each of us understand, and certainly our families understand, this isn't a 9-to-5 job. It certainly is not a 9-to-5 job. In particular, if you're living away from the capital city, and the member from Cumberland would know that, the member from Humboldt, and you're raising your children. Being an MLA, I liken it to a personal relationship, actually, to bring it back to people. It's a relationship, though, that isn't with one person, it's with so many people. And this is what we heard about over the course of the last 2 days. And I would say that you get out of that relationship exactly what you get out of any relationship. It's what you put into it. And we are seeing a whole lot of people walking out this door that have put in so very much. And we heard about that and their relationships over the course of the last couple of days. The people you work with, that's our elected members. I talked about team a little bit earlier, and I think beyond colleagues, we become friends, even maybe across the aisle at times, Mr. Speaker, as we collectively represent Saskatchewan residents. Yes, each of you, actually there was a comment made again by the member from Weyburn. He talked about how you might be forgotten when you walk out those doors, and that's true to some degree with all politicians, and I think it's not cliche. I think there is a part to that. And I would say that it's on us to not let that happen. It's on us to keep those relationships strong. It's on us to realize that we get out of this relationship exactly what we put into it. I want to just mention, and again, irrespective of who's in government, another group of people that we work with, and that's the entire public service and what they do. And I often say, and I don't just say it, we have the strongest public service in the nation of Canada. And I tell that to them when I meet them each and every time, and they can be proud of the work they do. And that's irrespective of who's sitting on this side of the Assembly. Another group of people, but individuals, and we heard about this over the course of the last couple of days many times, is the staff that work in this building, whether they be part of the operations of this place or whether they be the ministerial staff. And I encourage everyone to say a thank you as you find your way into summer and into election season, because they are our colleagues as well, and they are every bit as committed to what's happening on the floor of this Assembly and committed to improving their community and their province as any of us are. And the friendships that we form with them, and you heard about them, are very real. And then the people closest to us, our family and our friends. This includes our colleagues and staff as they become, as a member of Kindersley often says, extended family, really. But we are all part of a family. We're a son or a daughter. We may have a spouse or partner. We may be parents. And as I say many times, and I think it's important, that's why I stand up and say it, is I don't believe there's ever been a member that's served on the floor of this Assembly that hasn't had the love and support of their family. And my goodness, has that been evident in the speeches that we've listened to the last couple of days. I heard this from a number of members, that they really, as they prepare to not run again and leave this Assembly, they'll take the memories of each of the individuals that they have worked with, and they're going to take a piece of that with them. It really is forming, in some ways, who they are. Well, they should know that each of us that remain or hope to remain, we're also taking some of you. And this Assembly, I would say, is taking a piece of you as we continue the work that you can proudly say you were a part of. So I want to personally thank each and every one of you for stepping up and serving. Whether that service was short or historically long in some cases. So to Jennifer, to Gary, Dana, Ken, Marv, Terry, Hugh, Gord, Doyle, Fred, Greg, Dustin, Delbert, Don Morgan, Don McMorris, and Donna, thank you. Saskatchewan is a better place for your service. couple of final thank yous, Mr. Speaker, before we depart and close this session out. Find our way to the election trail. Mr. Speaker, I want to just take a moment to thank you and your staff for the work that you do in the operations of this place, the table officers, all of those that work in Ledge Assembly services. Your work is equally challenging, and your dedication to bettering this province and bettering the environment of where we can debate, and previous and post elected members will debate as well. To the legislative security, to the Sergeant-at-Arms, I say thank you. To those that are working in Hansard and broadcast services, I say thank you for what you do. The cafeteria staff, the custodians throughout the building, and everyone else who keeps this building working and functioning really on a day-to-day. It's a beautiful, beautiful building, Mr. Speaker, but I think it's an equally impactful building when you consider the work that happens here, has happened here for over 100 years, and it's only because of everyone that keeps this building functioning that is the case. The media and the press gallery, I will once every 4-year cycle say thank you to you. But I do thank you. Part of what happens here in a democracy, and it's, as Winston Churchill said, an important part of this is the work that the opposition does in capturing your eye and making that statement, that front page story that the member from Indian Head Milestone had told me to not pay attention to very much because you're likely making another one for the next day. But I do thank you for your work in communicating to the Saskatchewan public. I don't always agree with it, and if you ever want to run your stories by someone for just a little bit of editing, I always would make myself available. But thank you for your work. To the opposition members and all the staff that are over there, the work that you do is important. I don't like it and I don't agree with it, but it's so important. In the scope of a democracy, you need to hold the government in account. That is the job of the opposition, Mr. Speaker, and I would say that you do it competently, you do it very well, and in particular to the Leader of the Opposition that I know is serving in this Assembly for all the right reasons. Everyone is, Mr. Speaker, but I want to single out the Leader of the Opposition for the work that she does. It's not easy work, I know. Well, I don't know, and I hope I never know, but I know leading a party, Mr. Speaker, on the floor of this Assembly and working with everyone and coming to points of agreement and points of direction is not, and I wish her not luck, but all the best over the course of the next number of months as we find our way to vie for Saskatchewan votes over the course of this summer. This place doesn't function without our House leadership teams, just won't. And so for all of those that might watch on Hansard and think that members on the government side and members of the opposition never ever speak, I'm here to inform them that some of them speak every day. And this House wouldn't function without those conversations. And so I want to thank both leadership teams on both sides of the House. And last but not least, I want to thank all colleagues, all MLAs on the floor of the Assembly. For your service, and hopefully what will be continued service for those that are running again. You can be very proud of the work you do on behalf of your constituents. You can be very proud of the work that I think we collectively do on behalf of all Saskatchewan residents. And sorry, that wasn't the last one. The last one is this. To your families, through you, please say thank you. To your spouses, your partners, to your children, to your parents. I know you aren't here without their support. And I would just appreciate if you would thank them on behalf of myself for allowing and supporting you to do the work that you do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
To make an end of session statement.
Leave has been requested to make an end of session statement. Is leave granted? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is indeed a privilege and an honor to be able to rise today on this last day of not only the spring session, but the last day of the 29th legislature, and enter in some remarks, and I thank the Premier for his remarks. And, looking back to the start of the 29th legislature, 2020, we've been through some things. Certainly some that I think we all might care to never go through again. I think of COVID, and the loss there, the changes that were necessitated. We've seen protests, we've seen barricades, we've seen a lot of people coming to their legislature and bringing their needs and their concerns forward. In the last couple of days, we've heard a lot of members who are not seeking re-election give what they know to be their last speech in this Assembly. And to all of them, on both sides, Mr. Speaker, I want to say thank you for your service. I probably listened to an unhealthy amount of them at times. You know, as the Premier has noted, there will always be disagreement, but we don't have a healthy democracy if we don't have the ability to debate, and to debate freely. I am going to single out a couple of members. I will say I've got a couple fewer who are leaving, but some important and valuable team members and experience nonetheless. I say, first of all, to the member for Saskatoon University. I wrote in first names in my notes, Mr. Speaker, so I'm going to endeavour not to use them. Someone who ran in 2016 and lost by a slim margin, but she was not deterred. And I think anyone who knows this member would not be surprised by that. She kept at it and won her seat in 2020. And in her maiden speech, she talked about the many people who helped her win this seat, as we all owe a debt to those who put us here. But I want to quote something that she wrote about her mom. She impressed upon me the value of service to others, especially those less fortunate in our society. She also taught me to always consider other people's perspectives, which showed me the value of listening to others and striving to listen to others and understand their needs. I hope these lessons will serve me well in public office. And Mr. Speaker, indeed they have. The rights of workers, the rights of unions, the economic and reproductive rights of women, rights of gender and sexual diverse people in our province. This is a member who consistently shows up on the side of those oppressed and less fortunate. And the member has never failed to find the courage to speak up, even when it's hard and even when it's uncomfortable. And Mr. Speaker, that is an important trait. And I have no doubt that she will continue to speak truth to power, and I wish her and Brian every happiness in the future. Mr. Speaker, a few words about our friend and brother, the member from Cumberland. Someone who had a big week last week celebrating both a birthday and a 29th anniversary. He and his wife, Sandra, and he gave his last member statement as the MLA for Cumberland, and we will miss him as well. Someone who was elected in 2008 in a highly contested by-election, already a respected town councillor, a school board trustee, a business owner. He fought doggedly and won that nomination. And I think during that nomination, he already showed the kind of heart and tenacity that have characterized his time in this Assembly. That same tenacity and that heart was on full display many times, but especially when he brought forth the Saskatchewan Strategy for Suicide Prevention. Now, anyone who knows this member knows that he is not much for political theatre. He sought nothing other with this bill than change, because he knew and he knows how high the stakes are for the people that he serves. And I think we all know this bill failed not once but twice, but that did not stop him. And I don't think that surprises anyone either. And I know how hard, and it's been mentioned by the Premier, how hard he fought both on the floor of this Assembly, but in conversation with people, other members, and community members, to bring this bill forward again, a bill that finally passed in June of 2021. And that was a good day. A victory, but speaking plainly, not the one that he wanted, because he didn't just want that bill to pass, Mr. Speaker. He wanted people in his community to stop dying. He wanted the grief and the funerals and the loss of life to stop. And to my brother from Cumberland, I say, please know that we will continue to take up that work for you in here and out in the community. We owe that to you and to the families that you fought so hard for. Now, I had a number of opportunities, chances to do a few road trips with a member from Cumberland, along Hanson Lake Road, out to Creighton, and up to Sandy Bay and Buffalo Narrows, and a few things. On those trips, it was really hard to tell. He has a great sense of humor, and it was really hard to tell when he was joking. Sometimes he'd string me out for half an hour at a time before I realized he's telling me a joke. And one memorable plane ride up to Hatchet Lake. But another thing about those trips is that when you're traveling with this member, it was clear how much he loved the people and the constituency that he served, and how much they loved him in return. And Mr. Speaker, if we can say that at the end of the day, that's something to be very proud of. I know how hard he worked to gain and maintain that love and trust, and I know he won't stop. And I wish him and Sandra all the best. Now, Mr. Speaker, I don't have remarks prepared for all of the members on the government side that are leaving, but I do have a few remarks to put into the record. First of all, to the member for Riversdale, we wish you all the best with your health and everything that is coming up for you and your family in the coming days and months. To the member for Weyburn Big Muddy, he's got socks on today, Mr. Speaker. You know, recently I had the opportunity to sit down with the member and his oldest son, Jack, and we talked some baseball, and that always wins a lot of love, Mr. Speaker. But yesterday, when he talked about his kids in this Assembly, I don't often cry when members on the other side are speaking, not certainly out of any sense of, other than anger, perhaps. But that was a very touching moment. And I wish you all the best. I'm wondering who I'm going to pick on next. To the member for Saskatoon Northwest, someone I served against, opposite on the education file at a very, very difficult time. And I tell this story behind your back, so I might as well tell it here. The fights are real. People want to know, when you're in there and you're angry, are you really angry? Yeah, I really, really am sometimes. But you know what? During that time, a time when none of us had a handbook, I thought a lot about grace and extending that to ourselves and all of us in here and the people of the province, the medical professionals who were doing their best, those in schools. You know, Mr. Speaker, I had the member's phone number. I try not to overuse it. But when I picked up the phone and brought forward concerns, it didn't happen on the floor of this legislature. Those concerns were taken into account, and I'd like to think that that collaboration made a difference, and I want to thank you for that. To the member briefly from Saskatoon Southeast. Yeah, don't leave your phone out around him. That's good advice. And yeah, some of those dust-ups we had, especially in committee, I don't think I've ever been more angry, and you should ask my husband how angry I can get. I've never been more angry sometimes. But you know what? Also, I've heard you talk about the importance of safety. You've won the respect of people who I have a great deal of respect for. And I can see your shoulders a bit lighter these days, as I remarked to you recently. Sincere best wishes for you and for Sandy and everything that you're going to take on in the hope, maybe more trips to Jollibee's, I'm not sure, but wish you all the best. Very briefly, to the member for Indian Head Milestone, my home constituency. I don't know if folks know this. I knew Mickey way back, and I guess I get to say nicknames. Way back when I was a kid and he played for the Lang Knights. I will say this about that member. When you introduced my mom and dad in this assembly, you put me to shame. It's probably the nicest introduction that I've ever heard of them. And if you're okay by my parents, that's not nothing. And thank you for your service. To the member for Humboldt-Watrous, the longest serving female cabinet minister in the country. As a woman in leadership, you're owed that respect. And, you know, watching you look up at little Joy in the galleries, I hope you get to spend a lot of time with Joy and all of your grandkids. And that extends to all those members, all members, who are not seeking re-election. This is a difficult job, and I sincerely thank you all for your service and wish you success and happiness in whatever you take on next. One more, Mr. Speaker, I want to say a thanks to you. As all members on the floor of this Assembly, our job is to represent and uphold the interests of our constituents. And that goes for all of us. But you've got an added role as Speaker. In addition, you have the responsibility of upholding the rules and traditions of this Assembly. And taking on this role at the height of the pandemic, I know this has been challenging, but it is important. And I want to thank you for your leadership of this Assembly.
Hear, hear.
The rules and the traditions of this Assembly exist to uphold our democracy and to serve to instill and protect the confidence of people in this institution. And that is a big responsibility. I want to thank you and all of those in your office. I saw Newly up here, to Sheila, Twyla, and that new baby. I want to say thank you to all of you.
Hear, hear.
I want to say thank you to Iris and the clerks and the procedural staff for serving us so well. Hansard and Broadcast Services, the Sergeant-at-Arms, Lyle and John, the LDSU, the cafeteria, with a special shout out to Linda, who always takes such good care of us, and all those who work in this building. So too many to name. And I too want to thank the media for their role in covering the proceedings. The role of the media and informed voters is crucial to our democracy. The accountability that provides, even if it's uncomfortable for us, it is a very important role. And I want to thank you all for serving.
Hear, hear.
I want to say thanks to the staff in both caucus offices, all those who work in the constituency offices, and party staff. All of these roles are crucial. I want to say a special thank you to my chief of staff, who we dragged back from thinking he'd left this building. It could happen to one of you, I don't know. To Mitch and Brock, and Cheryl, who I introduced earlier today, to Jeanette, to Landon, to Chris, one of our newest members, to Zoe, Kelsey, Emily, and Ron. You serve us very well.
Hear, hear.
And speaking of serving well, Mr. Speaker, I want to say a special thank you to this team of Saskatchewan NDP MLAs, for not only how you serve in this building, but more importantly, how you serve and you connect out in the community. I think that is evident with the trust that you've built with people right across this province. Now, there aren't very many members opposite who served in opposition, and you don't know until you know how hard they work, a disproportionate effort and a disproportionate impact that belie the smaller than we'd like numbers. But you know what? I think this province has always liked a good underdog story. You guys, as our House leader said very, very well, there's been so many moments that have made me and this team proud. But during the emergency debate, I might be paraphrasing, after 40 hours of debate, standing up for the rights, some of the most vulnerable in this province, something that I still hear remarked upon time and time again, I believe the House leader said thank you, because what had happened here is this team found its feet, found its voice, and it solidified us. And I want to say thank you again to each of you for doing the work that you do. I'm very proud of you all. And I want to thank the Premier and all of the MLAs for their service. As I've already said, the differences sometimes are very real, and it's the reason we have different political parties. It's the reason we have a democratic system. And we all have a role to play in this democracy, holding each other, being accountable to the people that we serve. And I know we all pay a price for that, especially time spent with family. I want to say thank you to the families of all MLAs who provide support and forgo time with their loved ones so that they can serve. And today, as we wrap up the session and get out across the province ahead of the next election, I want to say how excited I am for that time, because that truly is the best part of this job. Getting out across the province and connecting with people, hardworking, wonderful people who call this province home. And I think we have agreement there. There is opportunity and hope in every corner of this province. And it is the people of the province, ultimately, who will decide. And it is who we all ultimately serve. I want to say thank you again to the Premier, to all colleagues here, and I want to wish you safe travels home and safe travels over the summer. Thank you.
Recognize a member from Saskatchewan Rivers.
As leader of Sask United Party, it is with a heart full of gratitude and a spirit brimming with hope that I stand before you today, because change doesn't happen for no reason. Thank you to the residents of Saskatchewan that we are privileged to serve in our beloved province. As we must remember, we are the servants to the people and the causes that matter to them, each and every one of them. I have many people to thank in this building for their dedication. They've been a pleasure to work with, from the cleaning staff, house services, procedural services, libraries, building staff, sergeant of arms, cafeteria ladies, Ray the mailman, security who welcome me into the building every day with a bright smile. The clerks, the pages, the ministerial staff who work well with my constituent assistant, the information technology gentlemen who occupy the space beside my office and welcome me every morning with a smile as well. The people in Hansard, the wonderful media, I do appreciate you. And to you, Mr. Speaker, thank you. Thank you for your years of service and dedication to the province of Saskatchewan. To my Assembly colleagues, thank you for lessons learned and friendships formed and given. Good luck in future endeavors. May you all find fulfillment and peace in your next chapter of life. Thank you, and God bless this beautiful province and the people that we are privileged to serve.
Recognize the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that when this Assembly adjourns at the end of this sitting day, it shall stand adjourned to the date and time set by Mr. Speaker upon the request of the government, and that Mr. Speaker shall give each member 7 clear days' notice, if possible, of such date and time. I so move.
Before I ask for approval of that motion, I have a few comments. As we close this spring session, there are many people that I would like to acknowledge. The Clerk's Office, Iris Lang, Ken Ring, Kathy Biernack, Rob Park, Ann Drake, Daniel Humble-Sellinger, Miranda Gutenwright, the pages, the staff of the Legislative Assembly. Thanks to you all for your amazing teams, for extraordinary work that you do to serve the members. Special thanks to Lyle Fredrickson, Sergeant-at-Arms and his staff, to Steve Bata and his team. We very much appreciate what you do, always on call to respond and accommodate the building needs of the members and staff at any time. To Hansard team, broadcast services, the committees branch, we appreciate your many hours of recording, documenting, and facilitating the legislative process. Not always an easy job, especially during heated debate. Thank you to my staff, Sheila Sterling, Twyla Wilson, Nuli Mingo, and summer student Danica Rodenbush for their support, especially during session when things can get chaotic. Thanks for keeping things running smoothly in the office. Thank you, Janet, my constituency assistant, for your diligence and hard work for the last 12 years. We have traveled many miles serving the constituents of bigger Sask Valley. Thank you to my constituents for having faith in me as your MLA, electing me 6 times. It has been an honor and a pleasure to serve. I would like to thank my wife, Cindy, and my family for their ongoing support for my role as an MLA and a speaker. Our families make great sacrifices so that we may serve the citizens of the province. Thank you. When a member is elected by his peers as Speaker, they give up their voice in the Assembly. They take an oath of impartiality to serve the needs of all members and parties. I would like to read the oath that I took when I became Speaker. Members of the Legislative Assembly, I wish to express my gratitude, thanks, and humble acknowledgement of the high honor and Assembly has conferred on me. While I leave the floor of this Assembly to take Speaker's chair, I leave behind all political partisan biases in order that I may discharge with impartiality to all and to the best of my ability the various important duties pertaining to the high office of Speaker. It will be my aim and duty to uphold the principles and traditions of the Assembly and secure for each member the right to express his or her opinions within the limits necessary to preserve decorum, to recognize the rights and privileges of the honourable members, the political groups, and the Assembly itself, to facilitate the transaction of the public business in an orderly manner, and above all, to seek to be fair and impartial in the decisions you entrust in me. I carried out my duties despite the behavior of the government leadership, which will I now take this opportunity to explain the challenges that I've had as Speaker. The signs of inappropriate behavior by the government House Leader took place with a former Speaker. The government House Leader, MLA for Meadow Lake, bragged that he could get the Speaker to rule in any way that he wanted. There's plenty of evidence that did take place. The government House Leader would text the Speaker how he should rule on a regular basis. The Speaker resigned and ran federally. Speaker Mark Doherty would not bow to the intimidation from the government House Leader. Mark said he just shut off his cell phone. While I worked with Mark on the Board of Internal Economy, the government House Leader was talking about having the Speaker Doherty removed. When I became Speaker, the intimidating and harassing text messages began immediately, trying to influence my rulings. My experience with the government House Leader in the chambers includes threatening gestures. Whenever I ruled against him during session, he would start yelling at me and stand up and flash his suit jacket and storm out. An example of inappropriate behavior and attempting to influence me as a Speaker is one of the hundreds of text messages government House Leader sent. The example of one of these text messages was sent on March 22nd, 2023, and I quote, "That's an absolute bullshit ruling, completely wrong, and Iris will tell you that." Iris referring to the clerk. I'll say it again, March 22nd, 2023, from the government House Leader concerning a ruling that I made. That's an absolute bullshit ruling, completely wrong, and Iris will tell you that. It soon got back to me that my removal as Speaker was discussed on a regular basis in the government caucus. Last fall, the government House Leader stopped sending inappropriate text messages to me, but continued sending them to the clerk. The government House Leader handed over the duty of texting me to the Deputy Government House Leader, MLA for Estevan. She especially harassed me during the emergency debate on the parental rights motion. And I'd like to read into the record a series of messages from the member from Estevan during that debate. On Monday the 16th, she texted, should she be speaking to the motion in front of her sitting hours? Just curious what leeway she had or has. Thank you. She is not on the motion. She will have an opportunity to speak to this when she actually speaks to the bill. Once again, if you want MS to speak to the bill, we will have a chance, but he needs to be speaking to the motion of extended hours and rules. Thank you. State of health care. This has nothing to do with the motion. Sorry to keep harping. On October 17th, she texted, "It's been pretty good today. Can you ask her to talk to the bill, please?" I replied once, I said I did, and she replied, "But she is not listening. This is not about health care. The bill, please. This has nothing to do with the bill. Can you please bring her back to the bill?" Thursday, October 19th, she texted me, "You going to bring her back to the bill?" Think about this. You going to bring her back to the bill? That's when I got up, as I've done many times, and handed the chair over to the Deputy Speaker. And as I went out that door, went down to the end, I'm going to go up by the government lounge like I do, because it's the shortest route to my office. There was a staffer, a government staffer, sitting in a chair, only person out there. And as I went by the government lounge, as I passed the government lounge, Reg Downs, special advisor to the Premier, came out of the lounge and lunged at me, nearly hitting me, and stamped his feet very aggressively. It was obvious there was communication between the government Deputy House Leader, the government staffer, and Reg Downs, who was waiting inside the government caucus lounge. This is not the first time I was threatened like this. Another MLA rushed me at a party function and came very close to headbutting me. The government House Leader of the MLA from Meadow Lake showed signs of inappropriate behavior from the time he was first elected. misleading statements and out-and-out lies. He has been called out numerous times. He expects his staff to go to his home, pick up his clothes. He has trouble keeping staff. There's a revolving door of staff coming and going. But more disturbing is his obsession with guns and his use of intimidation, both verbally and physically. His desire to get permission to carry a handgun in the Legislative Assembly is particularly disturbing. Another incident reported by a former special constable was when the government House Leader flaunted the rules concerning weapons when he brought a hunting rifle into the Legislative building. He owns many weapons, including a 223 AR style 4-shot clip, lightweight, which looks like an assault weapon. Weapons like these can be easily converted to more than 4 shots. As I stated before, my experience with the government House Leader includes threatening gestures. Whenever I rule against him in the Assembly, he will start yelling at me and standing up and flashing a suit jacket. As the gestures and behavior became more aggressive, I worried that he might be carrying a handgun. My concerns over his mental stability and his obsession with guns was only confirmed when he heckled after the passing of the motion to devolve all relevant parts of the Firearms Act to the province. He twice yelled, open carry next." Many people have asked me what I plan to do after politics. I have an opportunity to participate in international electoral observation missions around the world. But first, before I travel thousands of miles to support democracies facing challenges worldwide in recent decades, with the resurgence of populism and the increase in popularity of leaders with autocratic tendencies, I'm going to carry out the remainder of my term as Speaker right here in Saskatchewan, championing the electoral process and continue being the custodian of this institution and defend and protect our democracy. Saskatchewan is blessed with wonderful people, whether they are Indigenous or descendants of immigrants or newcomers who have only been living in Saskatchewan for a few years. Saskatchewan is also blessed with rich agricultural land, vast natural resources, and a first-class entrepreneurial spirit. Saskatchewan deserves a government that reflects those values, our province's values of honesty and integrity. Is it the pleasure of the Assembly to adopt the motion? Carried. This House now stands to the call of the Chair.
I move that this House do now adjourn.
Deputy House Leader has moved to adjourn the House. It's the pleasure of the Assembly to adopt the motion. This House now stands to the call of the Chair.